These financial wizards chose not to swim with the sharks on Wall Street. Instead, they went a lot further and are doing a lot more. Sammie Rayner tonight, right here on Rainmakers from Lumana Credit. The picture that we showed at the start is of people who I would expect to see them on Wall Street, and instead you've chosen to do something different. Tell us what it is.
So Lumana is a community development organization. We're a social enterprise based in Ghana, West Africa. And we support young Africans who are creating small community banks that can serve the needs of the poor in their community while also creating employment opportunities for other young folks in the community.
You're a business grad though, right?
Correct.
So doesn't that say that you ought to be on Wall Street? You ought to be counting, numbers and all the money that you have?
I think I entered the business school at an interesting time with the recession, and I really saw that the opportunities in front of me were really not meeting kind of the vision that I had of what business meant to me. And so I sought a different path.
So you were the co-founder of Lumana. What is it that when you went into it did you expect out of it? When you're getting ready, I think it was my first couple meetings with folks when I knew that I was going to be going to Ghana for the first time. And I think from my business background, I thought, oh, I'm going to bring all this knowledge and expertise. And I had a meeting with a woman who'd been working in microfinance, and she said, tell me if I were a businesswoman in a rural village in Ghana, and you were going to give me $25, tell me how you would run my fruit stand better. And that really helped me throw expectations out the window very early on and recognize I had to go and listen first, and that was going to be the most important part of how we'd build our business. Why Ghana or any other country as opposed to starting a financial services business right here in the United States?
That's a good question, and sometimes when I'm waking up at 5 in the morning to have calls in Ghana, I ask the same one. But I would definitely say, just as a young person, we were looking at what opportunities were available to us, and when you look at the Ghanaian market and you see that $100 or $200 can fund a whole business and help a mother support her family, it really changes, wow, look at what I can do. And I just remember reading the statistic in 2006 when Muhammad Yunus won the Peace Prize that he was serving 1 in every 1,000 poor people on earth at that point in time. And that just really stuck with me. Wow, one person can reach that many people. What kind of impact could we have?
So these $100, $200 loans is what you're talking about, microfinance, basically.
Correct.
And okay, so let's go. I said basically, why Ghana or any other country? Well, now, why Ghana itself as opposed to the Ivory Coast or Liberia or Sierra Leone or other countries in West Africa?
Well, I think it's important to first talk about why Africa, period, and why we saw the need. At the time, again, as I was saying, and I guess it was 2007 when I first really got excited about the topic, less than, at that time, 1% of the whole multi-billion-dollar microfinance industry was going to Africa as a continent. So that right there was definitely a signal that that's where we needed to be. And number two was just recognizing so few of the services were going to West Africa, period. And then looking at that huge need, and then also at the same time looking at Ghana is this amazing, shining star in Africa. It's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The education system is really developing.
the government's been stable for several decades now. And so looking at, wow, how has no one figured out how to make this solution work in that economy was really one of the draws for us.
So had you ever been to Ghana before you chose that?
I had not.
Did you know people who had been to Ghana, or was this just research that you had done in school, and then when you decided to do the business when you were in school?
So, well, I guess I didn't know I was going to start a business when I first went to Ghana. So once we actually formalized the business, I had already been once. It was really just the resourcefulness of the people that really ended up striking me and making me want to come back. I had, in a 2-month period of time, been working with a local chief and several community leaders, as well as several young people who really I saw as in the exact same spot I was in terms of, you know, wanting to realize, having so many different business ideas, wanting to see them go into fruition, but a lot of them lacked a real connection or support network that could help them grow those ideas. So it was really ultimately came down to the people and wanting to find a way to invest in people and meet them where they're at and help them grow their ideas.
A local chief. Now, you know, here we've got a mayor, we've got a member of council. We don't have chiefs so much that I can tell.
No.
How was that different for you as you dealt with the local chief?
It was definitely rocky at first, you know, just learning what your kind of your bounds are.
Was it a man?
Yes, yes. That's the traditional kind of chief would be a man.
Okay.
Fortunately, I mean, he actually lives in London, which is kind of an interesting side story. But a lot of leaders end up leaving in order to bring opportunities back. And I just found it so compelling that he had started a medical clinic in his community. He had started built onto their school, and it was really, I mean, Lumana came out of 2 major needs that he had identified. One being, you know, just that the young people in the community are all wanting to do kind of what he did and leave. And he said, but, you know, I see so many opportunities here. How can we create opportunities here?
What does Lumana mean?
Lumana means hope or light. It's actually a made-up word my co-founder and I, Cole Hoover, came up with, and later found a Burkina Faso dialect that it means light.
And in Ghana, they speak English, and that's the dominant language, right?
That's the official government language. There's 13 different tribal languages in Ghana.
Oh.
And our clients, maybe 10% of our clients will speak some English, but
really? Mostly
all Ewe, which is the local dialect.
So do you speak that language now?
Deka deka.
Does that need a little bit?
Little bit.
Got to ask you this. What did they think about this young woman from the United States coming over and telling them what to do?
The important part was that I wasn't telling them. And that's really the basis of Lumana's approach. We really are, if you try to compare us to a microfinance company, it's apples and oranges.
Really?
In a lot of ways. We're looking at, you know, microfinance is this amazing baseline for learning community needs. It's an amazing distribution network for how to, you know, get services to lots of people in a sustainable way. But what we really look at, and the reason why microfinance hasn't worked in rural areas a lot of the time, is because the transactional, you know, one loan approach isn't quite, isn't actually going to reach scale when you have farmers who are very spread out. So we look at not just the needs at the base of the pyramid, but how can you actually build a thriving rural economy and connect communities to a bigger market. So it kind of goes, I guess, beyond just the traditional model.
We're talking with Sammie Rayner, who is the co-founder of Lumana Credit. We're going to get the website up on the screen. Please be sure to go to that early and often, because not only is it a very good website, but you can learn an awful lot about it, just about not just microfinance, but some of the trials and tribulations of a business that is trying to help and is actually helping an awful lot of people. That's something that I've been really impressed with, Sammie. I mean, your company is what, 5 years old now?
We're just almost 3.
Almost 3 years
summer.
old now. Wow, almost 3 years old, and you already are reaching so many people. Tell us about how you were able to do it on the ground. You talked about it, or before the show, you talked about a gentleman named Eric.
Mm-hmm. And so that's, yeah, definitely a crucial part is partnership with individuals we consider to be entrepreneurs. And so a great example of that is Eric Fiazzoli, who's our loan officer, chief loan officer. And I think as an outsider, you know, if I were the one building our community banks myself, I would not see the opportunities someone like Eric has seen his whole life. And when we met Eric, he was actually working, incredibly progressive young guy, was working for an agriculture cooperative, one of the very first in his region. And when we met him, he was very frustrated. He had seen all along that if they didn't have an organic pesticide to fight this pest that he knew was going to eat away at their carrot crops, that their crop would fail. But because he wasn't in a position where he was empowered and had control over a solution, he had to watch his whole program he was part of kind of fall apart. And so that's really the secret of how we are able to reach so many people, is meeting young people like Eric where they're at, and helping, giving him support, obviously, and a lot of, you know, structure and support around him, but enabling him to have some creative control and build solutions that are appropriate to the people he knows best.
So how does he go about it? I mean, you just referred to yourself basically as a banker. So he's you're the lead banker and he is a teller?
Well, essentially we're like the mother organization and he's running the branch office. And so, I mean, we notice a culture change just from one village to the next, let alone when you're trying to jump to a totally different region, which we've done in this past year.
Oh.
And so we really kind of try to empower Eric as the leader of his branch. And essentially what he's doing is out in the community, encouraging folks to come in, go through our orientation.
What is the orientation? What is that?
So Lumana provides some core services to all of our microfinance clients. First and foremost, you go through a business training course everyone has to go through before they can get a loan. And a lot of that is just responsibility as a lender, that the people you're lending to know what an interest rate is and understand the risk that a loan, you know, taking a loan out
Do they pay for your course?
No, we have a parent, so we have an NGO in Ghana as well as a microfinance company, and so our education and mentorship program is housed in the NGO. And so, yeah, so they go through that. A lot of that's about, especially for the women, they're getting to know their group, they're working out group dynamics, because the loan that we offer is they're jointly liable for their loans, although they are individually responsible.
Are these what's called circle loans? Is that what you call them?
Yeah, cooperative.
Cooperative loans.
Is the approach. And then we also offer, every client starts with a savings goal. And that's not just for them to reach their goal, but that's how we measure our impact.
What kind of loans do you make?
They're loans for fishmongers,
What's
women,
a fishmonger?
Women who are...
I don't know what a fishmonger is.
Fishmongers are mostly women who salt and smoke and process fish and then sell them. We're in several maritime communities. And then following that, they set their savings goal.
They get their loan, and then all throughout, Eric is actually every month meeting and doing savings planning workshops. And really the core of our program, I think at the end of the day, whether the loan itself has had a huge impact on their different businesses, if you can show that people are putting away savings that are going toward their kids' education, improvements in their home, healthcare, that's really, how we're going to demonstrate our impact long term.
So it sounds like that in addition to being a branch manager, he's a financial manager too.
He's got a big job.
Tell me about Nancy, and I'm not sure if I can pronounce her last name, Agbenyega? Agbenyega. She's a farmer, right?
Yes. So we've, through working with folks like Eric, have learned a ton about farming, and specifically Nancy is one of our farming clients. And she sells mostly tomato is kind of her biggest crop, and she's in the village of Atourcourt. We actually, so she's been a client since my first trip to Ghana, implementing our pilot.
Yeah, now when you say village, are you talking about like a small area of 500 people or 100 people, or what are you talking about?
I'm talking about, around 500 to 1,000 people. Actually, more, some as small as 100.
So there might be a stoplight in town, and there's, a
Dick's Drive-In.
Yeah, Dick's Drive-In.
No, a lot of our communities, as I said, we're in about 10 communities that are along the beach, and then we've just expanded into a new region in closer to the capital, but still a peri-urban community.
Then there's someone else who you talked about before the show. His name's Sina, is there? Senna. Tell us about him.
Yes, and definitely Senna ties in with Nancy's story. So when we were initially getting started with agriculture clients, we noticed that they would get kind of to a certain point and then wouldn't really be able to take out any more money. And we were trying to figure out, okay, why, they're clearly growing, they're increasing production, and found that about 50% of the food produced in Ghana actually goes to waste. With tomato crops, a lot of the time that's even higher.
Really? Now this is an economy and a culture where they don't eat really well. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Yes, unfortunately.
And there's a lot of foodborne illness, and yet with all of that, they have a lot of food that goes to waste. Why is that?
Was puzzling to us, and a lot of it is just tied to lack of processing or any kind of way of storing your food. There's dairy, anything like that doesn't work because there's no refrigeration in a lot of the cases.
In the villages where you work, do they have electricity?
They are electrified. Most of our clients don't actually have electricity themselves, but there are neighbors and whatnot who have electricity. And so what we found was, okay, we could keep giving more loans, but unless we can find, number one, either a way to store, or two, get a consistent demand for someone like Nancy with her tomatoes, then our money isn't going to actually really solve the problem in and of itself. And so actually through our fellowship program, we've sent 60 young people from all over the world to Ghana to date through this program. One of our agriculture fellows was researching the supply chain for how tomatoes get to market and met a tomato canner in the village. And
they actually have some video from, is this a cannery that we have the video from?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Pretty impressive guy who had gone to Switzerland, has incredible background, farming education, and again, like Eric, rather than taking that degree and using it to go outside, he said, I want to help my community here. And unfortunately, the financial systems are just not structured to serve that kind of small and medium-sized enterprise. which I believe is really, ultimately the key to unlocking these communities and enabling them to, become more of a part of their country's growth.
Actually, in preparation for the show, you sent me a stat, and I think it was something like 65% of the gross domestic product of Ghana is these tiny businesses.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's pretty substantial, and if there is not a financial market for them, you're providing it.
Exactly.
We're talking with Sammie Rayner, who is of Lumana Credit. The website's up on the screen. Strongly encourage you to learn more about it, because this is a business that started basically from an idea in college, and Sammie and her co-founder have made it into a business that is headquartered in the United States and in Ghana at the same time. So where are you going with the business? What's next?
So really what we've seen through the scenario I kind of described with Eric, how we've seen in a short amount of time, he's not only identified and created a business that serves the poorest members of the community, he's also now making investments in the tomato cannery and other organic farming initiatives that will help that community, get connected. And in this past year, we actually acquired a portfolio of another microfinance program and really what drew us to that program was a very similar leader we saw. And we're noticing this trend all across the country, and we actually get emails from founders of similarly, structured programs all over Africa. And ultimately, what we found is while, the massive scale approach, I think it's important to scale quickly, but intentionally being slow and deliberate with our program, we've noticed investment in an entrepreneur who's going to grow the bank and ensure that all of these diverse and very complex problems around poverty are addressed. It's going to have to be an investment in a person who can see those problems. And so over the next several years into the future, our growth will be a lot through kind of an M&A strategy, continuing to identify other programs that need support and need that infrastructure, capacity building, and financing, and then also going into new communities where we meet young entrepreneurs who are ready to see this solution realized. A lot of our clients, their ambition is more just to sustain. They're very happy people, and it's just access to what I consider basic needs that everyone has a right to. Everyone has a right to a savings account, a right to understand how to run and fulfill their job in a meaningful way. And so I think the future definitely looks like more and more of these community banks popping up, and over time, businesses like Senna's that are creating jobs are going to eventually help all of these communities to kind of rise up to a higher level.
When do you know that you've been successful with Lumana?
I would definitely say my past trip to Ghana was a mini success. Watching Eric and our staff running the program entirely, and seeing that I wasn't putting out fires and making connections, but that it was just running and growing was just such a huge success for me, and seeing that they were in a position where they felt they could solve their own problems. That was definitely a victory, and I would say long term, enabling hundreds of other people like Eric to grow from this model is going to be our way forward.
Well, let's talk about that, the way forward. It sounds like what you're talking about is scalability. Is it that you think that you could take this business into another poor country and do the same thing? Or what do you, is there something that is unique about Ghana that you think that prevents you from doing it, or what did you learn?
Certainly our vision is to go outside of Ghana eventually. But initially we're very, very focused on Ghana. I think what is different from what a lot of people read about in terms of different social enterprises is Lumana is really creating a distribution network for services. And you can't just do that over, it's not just a product you're putting in someone's hand. It's completely restructuring how the village economy functions and who are the people actually leading that process, who are the people who are instigating those innovations, and taking the time to listen and understand the communities has been very crucial in that process.
What's been your biggest challenge? Because you're up to 700 clients now?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, congratulations, that's something.
Thank you.
Because that's probably 700 families' lives that you've changed.
We like to think so, yes. And I think that initially the challenge a lot was getting the program to work without as much need from the U.S. office in getting them off the ground. And so, as I've kind of just mentioned, that hurdle we've found a way to overcome. And I think that one of the other bigger challenges is going to be funding our approach moving forward. I mean, because essentially what we're talking about is a very, very flat structure where each of our branches is empowered to build the model that fits within the structure we've set, but build a model that's going to meet the needs of that community. And so bringing in the right partners who see our vision is going to be really important.
We have less than 30 seconds left, and I'm going to ask you this question. You're 5 years down the road and you're looking back. How'd you do?
I'm smiling, hopefully, and hopefully in Accra, the capital of Ghana, at a meeting with several other folks who are running our community banks and hearing about all the progress they've made and all the people that we've served.
Sammie, thank you very much for being on the show. That's Lumana Credit. Go to the website, learn an awful lot more. We'll see you right here next time on Rainmakers TV. Take care.